The wind whispered through the cemetery like a mournful hymn, stirring the fallen leaves across the polished marble stones. Ely Sterling, a man whose name echoed in boardrooms and headlines, stood alone before a headstone carved with care and grief. Ethan Alexander Sterling, beloved son. 2008, 2020. Ely's shoulders sagged beneath the weight of 5 years of silence, guilt, and regret. He clutched a bouquet of white lilies, Ethan's favorite, and gently placed them against the base of the stone. His fingers trembled. The cold had nothing to do with it. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered, voice cracking. "I wasn't there when it mattered most." It had become a ritual. Every year on the anniversary, Ely's came to the grave, spoke to the silence, and left feeling even more hollow than before. But today felt different. A soft sound broke through his thoughts. A sniffle? He turned sharply. Just beyond the grave, nearly hidden behind a monument, sat a little girl, no older than 10. Her blonde hair was tangled, her coat ripped at the seams, and her feet bare against the frosted ground. Her knees were pulled tightly to her chest as she stared at the same headstone. Ely's brows knitted together. "Hey," he called gently, not wanting to scare her. "Are you all right?" The girl jumped, startled, eyes wide and frightened. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't mean to be here. I'll go." "No, wait," Ely said quickly, stepping closer. "It's okay. Do you know Ethan?" Her lip quivered. "He was my friend." Ely's froze. His heart skipped. "Ethan never mentioned a girl. What's your name?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She looked down. "Lily." Something inside him shifted. He had no idea this was just the beginning. Ely's crouched down slowly, eyes fixed on the frail girl named Lily. She looked like a shadow of childhood, thin, dirty, but with eyes far too old for her age. Her fingers clutched her knees tightly, as if letting go might cause her to vanish into the cold. "How did you know Ethan?" Ely's asked gently. She hesitated, biting her lip. "He used to come to the park, near the school," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes he'd bring me food. Or just sit with me." Ely's blinked, stunned. Ethan? His Ethan? His son had snuck away from their guarded estate to befriend a girl in rags. He was kind, Lily added, her voice shaking. "He said I didn't have to be afraid. He said people like me matter too." Ely's felt the wind knocked out of him. In all the memories he had of Ethan, private tutors, piano recitals, vacations in Monaco, he'd never once imagined his son slipping off to comfort a homeless girl. His heart cracked further at the thought. "And you've been coming here since?" he asked. Lily nodded slowly. "Every year. I didn't know where else to go. I just missed him." Ely stared at her, unsure what emotion to cling to, grief, shock, guilt. This girl had known a version of Ethan that he hadn't. One that had loved quietly, without anyone watching. The realization burned. "Where are your parents, Lily?" he asked. Her face fell. She looked down. "My mom died. My dad, he left. A long time ago." His throat tightened. "So you're alone?" She nodded. The silence between them was deafening. Ely's took a breath and made a decision, one that would change both their lives. "Come with me," he said softly. Ely's opened the back door of his black Bentley, holding it for Lily. She hesitated, her eyes darting from the leather seats to the marble grave behind her, as if afraid stepping in might erase Ethan's memory. "It's warm," he said, offering a small smile. "And safer than here." She finally climbed in, curling up silently in the seat. As they drove through the city, Ely stole glances at her, her small hands wrapped in his oversized coat, her eyes staring blankly out the window. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't speak at all. The car pulled through the towering iron gates of the Sterling estate. The mansion loomed like a monument to wealth and isolation, marble walls, glittering windows, and silence that echoed too loudly. The staff watched curiously as Ely's walked in with a child clinging to his coat like it was her only lifeline. "Have a room prepared," he said without breaking stride. "Warm bath. Fresh clothes. Food." Lily's steps slowed as they reached a grand hallway lined with framed photographs, Ely's with presidents, business tycoons, and Ethan. One in particular caught her gaze, Ethan laughing in a sunflower field, dirt on his cheek, joy in his eyes. "That's how he looked when he talked to me," she whispered, pointing. "Like that?" Ely stopped cold. That picture was from a summer trip. He remembered Ethan running off from the cameras, disappearing into the field. When he returned, he had said nothing, just smiled. "He never told me," Ely's murmured. "Maybe he thought you wouldn't understand," Lily said softly. That he looked at her, startled. She wasn't just a child, she was carrying pieces of Ethan he never knew existed. In that moment, Ely's didn't see a homeless girl, he saw a thread connecting him to his son again. Steam curled from the marble bathroom as Lily stood in awe. A gold-framed mirror stretched across one wall, and soft towels were neatly folded beside a gleaming tub filled with warm, scented water. She'd never seen anything like it. A maid smiled gently. "Would you like help, sweetheart?" Lily nodded shyly. Her voice was barely audible. "Thank you." After the bath, she was given clean clothes, simple but soft, a wool sweater, cotton leggings, and cozy slippers. When she emerged, her hair brushed and skin warm, Ely's almost didn't recognize her. She still looked fragile, but there was a light behind her eyes now. A small sparked eye in the dining room, a bowl of soup steamed beside warm bread and a glass of juice. Lily sat at the long table, dwarfed by its size. She stared at the food as if it were a trick. "You can eat," Ely said gently, taking the seat across from her. She picked up a piece of bread slowly, hands shaking. The first bite brought tears to her eyes. "Lily," he asked after a moment, "why didn't you ever come to me sooner?" "After Ethan passed?" She looked down at her bowl. "I didn't think you'd want me around. People like you don't usually talk to people like me." The words hit him like a slap. He couldn't argue. She wasn't wrong. "Ely's?" she asked, fidgeting with her spoon. "Did Ethan die in pain?" The room went still. "No," Ely's whispered. "He died instantly. He didn't suffer." Lily's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I still talk to him," she said, looking up. "At the grave. I tell him everything." Ely's throat tightened again. "What did he say to you, before he died?" Lily hesitated, her eyes filling. "He told me to find you." Ely's breath hitched at Lily's words. "Find you?" He had heard that before, Ethan's voice, deep and calm, filled with that unmistakable warmth. The boy had always been wise beyond his years, full of compassion. "Find me," Ely's repeated softly, as if testing the words. "Why?" Lily wiped her nose with the back of her hand, still clutching the spoon tightly. "Ethan said if I ever needed help, if I was scared, you'd take care of me." The air in the room felt heavier. Ely's leaned back in his chair, feeling his chest tighten. 5 years of silence, 5 years of endless grief, and his son had trusted him with something even deeper than his love. Ethan had known the pain of the world, even at his young age. He had felt it, seen it in others, and still, he had hoped that his father would take the step Ely's had never taken. I never knew," Ely's murmured, his voice rough. "I never knew he did that." "He didn't talk about it," Lily whispered, a fragile smile on her lips. "But he'd bring food. He'd sit with me when no one else would. He made me feel like I mattered." Ely's closed his eyes. This was the son he hadn't known. The one who'd quietly done good in the world, who hadn't sought praise, who hadn't shared the stories of his kindness, and now, through this small, homeless girl, Ely's was learning the truth. His son had lived with more compassion than Ely's had ever understood. "I'll take care of you, Lily," Ely said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise. No one will hurt you again." She looked at him, eyes filled with a sadness that was too old for her years. "I believe you," she said softly. The next few days felt like a blur. Ely's found himself in uncharted territory, guiding Lily through a world she had never been part of. The mansion, with its marble floors and towering ceilings, seemed cold compared to the warmth of Ethan's memory, those fleeting moments when his son had reached out to someone else. But with Lily, things were different. The house began to feel a little less empty. Every morning, Lily would join him for breakfast, and they'd sit in the grand dining room, quietly sharing a meal. She wasn't accustomed to the luxury, but the simplicity of their routine was comforting. The housekeepers were kind to her, but Elise could tell Lily was still uncertain. She never asked for anything. Never took too much. Always looking over her shoulder as though she expected someone to pull her back into the cold point. One evening, after dinner, Elise took her to the study, his son's study. He had never allowed himself to step in since Ethan passed away. It was the one room that was untouched, preserved like a shrine. It had been his son's sanctuary, and now it was just another room in a house full of memories. Lily stepped in, her eyes wide, taking in the bookshelves lined with leather-bound novels, the trophies that Ethan had won. She walked to the window, staring out at the night sky. "Elise," she whispered, "this was Ethan's space, wasn't it?" He nodded, his throat tight. "Yes. It was." Lily turned, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "He would have wanted me to have this." Elise's heart swelled with grief, and yet, it was healing. He wasn't just keeping the memory of his son alive, he was honoring it. The days had passed quietly, but Elise couldn't ignore the nagging thought that had been growing inside him since the first night Lily arrived. She had trusted him with Ethan's secret, one he hadn't known his son had kept. The way Lily spoke of him, the kindness Ethan had shown, the care he'd given to someone who had nothing, left Elise with a burning need to understand more. Late one night, as the mansion was drowned in darkness, Elise sat alone in Ethan's study. The glow from the fireplace flickered across the room, casting long shadows over the desk. He found himself drawn to the wooden drawer where Ethan kept his personal things, things he'd never had the chance to go through. With a trembling hand, Elise pulled it open. Inside, he found journals, dozens of them. He hesitated, unsure if he was prepared for what he might uncover. Ethan's handwriting was familiar, neat and precise. Elise opened the first journal and began reading. The first page was filled with stories of Ethan's childhood, of adventures, school projects, and summer vacations. But as he turned the pages, the entries became more personal. The voice in the journal changed, more reflective, more compassionate. Ethan had written about his feelings, about the loneliness he sometimes felt, and about the way he noticed others who were hurting, people like Lily. "I met someone today," one entry read. "Her name is Lily. She's always at the park, sitting alone, and I think she's hungry. I'll bring her lunch tomorrow." The words hit Elise hard. His son had known Lily long before he did. Had reached out to her in a way that Elise never had. His chest tightened. "I'm sorry, Ethan," Elise whispered, the weight of the secret sinking in. Elise couldn't stop reading. The more he turned the pages, the more he discovered. Ethan had been so much more than Elise had realized. He wasn't just the boy he'd raised in luxury, the child who had everything. No, Ethan had been something else entirely. A boy who saw the world in its raw, broken form and tried, in the only way he could, to heal it. In one of the last entries, Ethan had written something that stopped Elise in his tracks. "I promised Lily that if she ever needed help, I'd make sure she didn't feel alone. I don't know how I'm supposed to do that, but I'll figure it out. I won't let her fall through the cracks." Elise's heart shattered. Ethan had made that promise knowing how deep the world's wounds ran. And now, it was up to him to fulfill it. The thought of letting another life slip away, another person who needed him, was too much to bear. Elise stood up abruptly, the journals clutched to his chest. He couldn't just sit there, lost in his son's memory. He had to do something. He had to act. The next day, he made the call. A new program was formed within the Sterling Foundation, one dedicated to helping children who were like Lily, lost and forgotten. He would do for them what he had failed to do for his own son, provide a future, a safe place, where no one would ever feel alone. As Elise looked out the window, his gaze drifting to the horizon, a quiet sense of purpose filled him. The road ahead was long, and it would be hard, but it was a road he was ready to walk, for Ethan. For Lily, for all the others who still needed someone to believe in them. Weeks passed, and the changes in the house were subtle but unmistakable. Lily had started to fill the empty corners of Elise's life, even if he couldn't fully explain it. She was still quiet, still distant in many ways, but the spark that Ethan had left behind seemed to ignite something in her. She no longer flinched when someone entered the room, no longer looked over her shoulder as if expecting to be abandoned again. One morning, after breakfast, Elise watched her draw in the garden. She had a natural grace to her, the way she held the pencil as if it was an extension of herself. Her sketches, of flowers, trees, the mansion itself, were simple, but there was a quiet beauty to them. He sat beside her, watching as she added a few more strokes to her picture. "You're good," he said, his voice warm. Lily looked up at him, surprise flickering in her eyes. "Really?" He nodded, his smile small but genuine. "You have a gift." Lily shifted uncomfortably, her fingers tracing the edge of the paper. "I never thought I'd be good at anything. I used to draw with whatever I could find, on the sidewalk or in the dirt." Elise's heart twisted. She had lived so long in a world that told her she didn't matter, no wonder she didn't see her own worth. But now, he was seeing a side of her that reminded him of Ethan, the way his son had quietly excelled in his own way. "You matter, Lily," Elise said softly. "And you have a future here." For the first time, Lily smiled, and it was a small but powerful thing. Elise knew it was just the beginning. Elise couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed this much. Lily had a way of brightening the mansion with her presence, even in the most unexpected ways. One evening, as the house buzzed with preparations for a charity gala, Elise found himself standing in the kitchen, watching Lily try to bake cookies. "Like this?" she asked, holding up a bowl filled with flour, sugar, and a suspicious amount of chocolate chips. He chuckled. "Well, you can't really go wrong with too many chocolate chips, I suppose." She gave him a sly grin and dumped in more, her hands covered in flour. Ethan always said cookies were better with lots of chocolate. The name hit him like a wave, but instead of the usual pain, Elise felt a strange warmth flood through him. Ethan's spirit, his humor, his kindness, they were alive in Lily now, in the small ways she spoke about him, in the ways she carried him with her. As they finished baking, Lily handed Elise one of the still warm cookies. She watched him closely as he took a bite, waiting for his reaction. He smiled, wiping a bit of chocolate from his lip. "It's perfect." Ethan would have been proud. Lily beamed, clearly proud of herself. "I think he would have liked it." As Elise looked at her, something in him shifted. This wasn't just about fulfilling a promise. This was about healing. Not just for Lily, but for himself. Ethan's love had rippled out far beyond their family, into this small, unassuming girl who had brought more light into his life than he ever expected. For the first time in years, Elise felt connected to something greater than his own grief. He felt a bond that transcended death itself. As the weeks went by, Elise watched Lily grow in ways he hadn't anticipated. She was no longer just a frightened child who had wandered into his life. She was becoming a part of it, slowly but surely, weaving herself into the fabric of his existence. It wasn't just her presence that changed him, it was the way she had changed the house, the atmosphere. For the first time in years, the mansion was filled with laughter, not the hollow kind that echoed through the empty halls, but the genuine, carefree sound of someone rediscovering joy. Lily had found a rhythm here, and so had Elise. They weren't just existing together, they were living. Elise's attention to his foundation grew as well. The initiative to support homeless children, inspired by Lily's presence, expanded faster than he could have imagined. There were now programs in place for children like Lily, those who had been left behind, who had nowhere to turn. But more than that, there was a community forming around it. It wasn't just about charity, it was about rebuilding lives, offering something that Elise had never realized was missing, hope. One evening, Elise found himself in a meeting with his board of directors. The discussion was about the expansion of their foundation. He spoke with a passion he hadn't known he still had. "We're not just saving these children," he said, his voice strong. "We're giving them a chance to make the world better, just as Ethan did. Just as Lily will." The room fell silent. No one spoke for a moment, but when they did, it was with a new sense of respect. Elise had become a man who wasn't just driven by profit or power anymore. He was driven by something much more important. Elise stood in the middle of the park, watching as children ran around, their laughter echoing through the crisp air. He had always known the weight of wealth, of responsibility, but now he understood something deeper. The true legacy a person leaves behind isn't in the material possessions they accumulate or the power they wield, it's in the lives they touch, the love they give, and the difference they make. Lily was there too, playing with the children, her face lighting up with joy. She had blossomed in ways he couldn't have imagined when she first came into his life. The girl who had once been lost and alone was now surrounded by friends, by warmth, by a future. And Elise knew that Ethan was with them in spirit, his memory woven into the very foundation of the foundation. Later that evening, Elise sat down at the same table he had shared countless meals with Ethan. Only now, Lily sat across from him, her eyes filled with that same spark of kindness his son had once had. It was as if, in some strange way, Ethan had passed the torch to her, and now it was their job to carry it forward. Elise, Lily said, breaking the silence. I'm really happy here. I'm not scared anymore. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything Elise had learned in the past months. The grief that had once consumed him no longer held him captive. He had found something worth living for, something that wasn't just about his past pain, but about the future he could build. I'm glad, Lily, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'll always be here. For you. For Ethan. In that moment, Elise understood the true meaning of family. It wasn't just about blood, it was about love, loyalty, and the ability to heal together. Ethan's story shows us that true legacy isn't built on wealth or status, it's built on kindness, empathy, and the willingness to make a difference in the lives of others. Elise and Lily remind us that no one is ever truly alone, and that through compassion, we can all find healing. Ask yourself today, how can you make a difference in someone's life? Whether it's offering a hand to someone in need, sharing a kind word, or helping build a better future, every small act counts. Start now, because, like Elise, we all have the power to change the world one life at a time. If this story inspired you, share it with others. Let's keep spreading hope and kindness wherever we go.